And within the last hour, French President Emmanuel Macron said he had a phone call with President Trump about the situation. This is all happening as European leaders gathered in Paris today for an emergency meeting, saying Trump has shut them out of peace talks.
And Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel's security cabinet will meet today to discuss the second phase of the ceasefire deal with Hamas. This comes as Netanyahu signaled that he is moving ahead with Trump's proposal to transfer the Palestinian population out of Gaza. He calls it the only viable plan to enable a different future for that region. He discussed the plan with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who kicked off a Middle East visit by endorsing Israel's war aims in Gaza. Netanyahu appears to be ready to resume the fighting after the ceasefire's current phase, which ends in 2 weeks.
Also, Michelle, family members of Israeli hostages being held in Gaza gathered in Tel Aviv today to mark 500 days since the October 7th attack. Relatives came together outside the American embassy to call on President Donald Trump to help assure the release of all the hostages as soon as possible. Family members of hostages who were murdered by Hamas spoke during the event. Hamas released 3 hostages Saturday. The first phase of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas ends in 2 weeks.
And we are hearing from the sister of Keith Siegel, the Chapel Hill man released by Hamas just weeks ago. Siegel's sister Lucy lives in Durham, and she tells us her brother spent more than 480 days as a hostage in Gaza. And during that time, she says Keith was able to push through the fear, the pain, and the uncertainty by thinking about the loved ones he hoped to see again.
He said he would start with our mother, and he'd have a conversation. So primarily these conversations were to himself in his head. Each day, throughout the day, that he would repeat to himself the day of the week, the month, the day of the month, and the year, over and over and over.
Keith and his wife Aviva are now living on the kibbutz in Israel, where Aviva moved following her release. Lucy says Keith hopes to return to North Carolina for a visit at some point.
Next at noon, record